We now move on to the question of a person that is thinking about getting married and they know the person they're going to get married to and someone they may get divorced from. Now, 99% of people will say no to both questions. I'm going to repeat that again. 99% of people in Australia will say no to this question. So you think very long and hard before you press yes, because most of us do not need to press yes here. So let's play it out. Firstly, we'll consider someone we'd like you to marry. Well, if you are already married and you're happily married, then you press no. You don't know the name of someone you're going to marry. You've already married them. Move on, press no, and stop listening to this video and get on with pressing next. But if you are in a de facto relationship or you're engaged, then you should consider pressing yes. So let's play out those two things. So firstly, deal with the excitement of someone engaged. If you are engaged to get married, then you know the name of the person you're getting married to, and you're going to do the will before you get married. Now, wills are revoked when you get married. So the day before you make your marriage, before you go to your marriage, you make your will, and then the next day it becomes invalid. So in that case, you'll need to put in the name of the person you're going to get married to. And you know the name is Mary Jane Teriaka. You know that person. So you press yes to that person. You know you're going to get married to them. Then the other situation is, this is John and Jenny. Now, John and Jenny have been together for a long time. They're from the hippie movement where they don't need a piece of paper to prove their love. And they're never going to get married. They've been together for many years. They've got lovely children, but they're never going to get married. So they make their wills. They press no to this question. If and when they then fly to Egypt, which is beautiful sunsets there, and they decide to get married on the spot, their wills are now revoked, and they don't know that. They can update their wills for free, but they should have, because they're a de facto relation, a loving long-term de facto relationship, they should have pressed yes. So here it is, and you've been in this is a man's will, and he has a beautiful de facto called Mary Jane Teriaka. He'll press yes there. So if you're in a de facto relationship or you're engaged, you press yes. If you're like 99% of us, you're already married, you press no. Oh, look, Professor Davies, I do want to get married in the future, but I don't know who I'm going to get married to. Well, then you press no. You've got to know the person that you're going to get married to. So you need to know a name. If you don't know who you're going to get married to, then you press no. You can update your will for free. So when and if that happy day arrives, just let us know and we'll give you a voucher to update your wills. Now let's turn to the second question. Know the name of someone you will divorce. Now again, 99% of people will say no to this question. Most people will say no to this question. And it's only for people that are currently married that are going to get divorced. So if you're happily married, then you'll leave the answer to no. I'll repeat that again. If you are happily married and you're not thinking of divorcing your partner, then you press no. And move on. Press next. Get on to guardians. But if you know the name of someone that you'll divorce, then we've got to start talking about that. So if you're happily married, you press no. But if you're contemplating divorce, so your lying, cheating husband, you've just found out he's having an affair, the first thing you do is you will update your will because you're now going to separate from him, or assuming you're going to separate from him. You don't wait for the divorce. You don't wait for the separation. You get a new will immediately, and we'll give you a voucher to update the will. So if you don't do that, if you don't update your will and you die, then that lying, cheating scoundrel of an ex-husband of yours will get all your assets. We don't want that. Oh, Professor Davies, in my state and in most states, when I get the divorce, the will's revoked. Yes, that's true. But what if you die before you get the divorce? Oh, I never thought about that. I better press yes. Yes, you should. So let's have a look. So you press yes, and that lying, cheating scoundrel is called Keith James Wayne. That's his name. And we'll put Keith James Wayne in. He is your husband at the moment. And it's a rocky relationship. So we're going to put Keith James Wayne in. So if you do get a divorce, you may never get a divorce. You may just separate, or you may get back together. Who knows? But if you do get a divorce, then your will remains valid, and you've now left everything to, say, your children, and nothing to that lying, cheating scoundrel. What about a situation, and again, this is getting into the realms of fantasy here, and most people are going to say no to this question, but in this case, Adolf and Corinne married at a young age, but Adolf took off. He went to fight in some war in Iran or somewhere, and Corinne never saw him again. She then met the most wonderful man, Winston, and they've been together for 17 years now. They've raised 3 beautiful children. They're in a de facto relationship because Adolf and Corinne are still legally married under Australian law. They got married in Australia. They're still married. They never got a divorce, so they're still married. And the relationship that Corinne has with Winston is one of a de facto relationship. Well, that's fine. And in fact, Corinne's forgotten about that young Adolf that went to fight in a war she never saw again. And life goes on. Many years later, she's got dementia, she's in a retirement home, and she gets served with divorce papers. It's the case that Adolf has turned up again, and he has decided to get married, and he can't get married until he divorces Corinne. So he divorces Corinne, and now Corinne's will is invalid, therefore not leaving anything to Winston. What a mess. So in that unusual circumstances, remember 99% of people will say no to both these questions, but in that unusual situation, for the husband you haven't seen for 20 years, she'll put in yes, and she'll type in Adolf Kaczynski. There we go. So now, if Adolf ever turns back up, or she decides to get a divorce against Adolf, her will remains valid, leaving everything to Winston and her children when Winston is dead. So 99% of people will press no to this question. Next, we're going to move to guardians of your little children.